So Blasphemous 2 finally came out, and it's pretty good. And one of the hallmarks of good games is horrific challenge runs, and Blasphemous delivers on that. Blasphemous 1 boasted a combat system that is heavily hinged on parrying, but in the second game, Team 17 thought to offer the illusion of choice, because everyone knows there's the correct one. Out of the 3 weapons, only 2 of them have the ability to parry. So today, we're asking the question, can you really beat Blasphemous 2 without parrying? And does the Veredicto really make up for that? The rules of this challenge run are quite simple. This is the Veredicto. It holds a slow normal attack, the only charged attack in the game, and a second mode that adds fire damage to your weapon instead of a parry. If that sounds underwhelming, that's because it is. You would initially think that this weapon is the Unga Bunga Strength Club, but you'd be mistaken, because hyper armor is a myth, and poise damage is calculated through quantum mechanics. But most importantly, there is no parry. Regardless, we're only allowed to use this weapon for combat. It's worth clarifying that other weapons will be used as traversal tools, since it's required for progression anyways. But I am not allowed to damage enemies with anything other than the Veredicto, which means I also cannot use spells. Although I make an exception for the Mirabas to return port because it has 0 combat use and it's just too convenient. So let's begin. The best course of action in the beginning is to get other weapons as they all unlock unique methods of traversal, alongside marks of martyrdom from killing enemies. So I went to Profundo Lamento to get the ability to wall climb and upgrade my weapon. Then I headed right over to the Aqueduct of the Costales, home to enemies that I simply outrange. Until of course they outrange my brain from my spine. Usually I wouldn't have a tough time parrying these enemies, but this time I had to adapt to a more boring stand-back playstyle. Through the Aqueduct, I was aiming to reach the Sacred Entombments. This is where you'd normally unlock the Veredicto, but since I already had it, I instead got an artifact that increases its damage. Next, we're off to the Growls to get the Sarmiento in the Palace of Embroideries. These areas are mostly filled with trash mobs that get outpoised, except for these guys who come along and rock the whole world. The Sarmiento is only a quick walk and some krillings away. And after that, we're set on the Ruego Al Alba, which is set in the Crown of Towers, guarded by the biblically accurate Sonic AU and the representative fanbase of the Sonic franchise. Now that I have the 3 weapons, I head straight to the Quarry of Thorns to give forgotten tribute to the horse guy for a quick trip to the part of Profundo Lamento that opens a path that leads straight to the Mother of Mothers Church. Aside from the ball-tingling nostalgia, we're here for the double jump ability, because the clickbait concept of the video is that we can't parry, and while that is pretty bad, it can be circumvented by the second dimension. This ability can be found underneath her sacred grounds, locked behind a platforming puzzle requiring all 3 weapons. So I make my way there, pay respects to Dio Gracias,
my great guilt.
Then complete the platforming to get under the sacred grounds. The goal down here is to reach the bottom and fight the boss. I also ended up accidentally saying no to this NPC, which ended up killing her later on. Oops. Afilaor is usually an easy fight, but when making the Veredicto, the devs were really aiming to hammer down on the penance. So if you aren't used to playing passive and dodging responsibly, he will clip you, which for me means it's time to learn. I took most of the damage trying to learn the spinning attack, but otherwise it was pretty simple to space out the fight. After the double jump, I made sure to go over to the Woke Streets to get the mana increase and the Rosary Breeds. And now it's time to completely sequence break the game. I did my first playthrough without the double jump until the last moment. And now that I have it, it kind of feels like the devs shouldn't have given me the power. But regardless, it's time to go after the 3 regrets. Starting with Orospina of the Embroiderers. If this fight somewhat reminds you of the demo Silksong boss, that's because it is. Orospina is the tutorial boss that teaches you how to jump. Her attacks look swift and deadly, but spacing yourself out and not panicking will keep you safe. The range of the Veredicto was a big help, and the damage made the fight feel even shorter. Heading back to the Sacred Entombments, I had to actually complete the area since I just passed by earlier. But despite that, this was the easiest place in the game, and I didn't have any qualms about it. Although I guess you can say it was a little dusty. But now it's time for the boss. Radames is a fight that requires a lot of vertical movement, which my double jump provides alongside an extra attack as I'm falling. And since I don't have the ability to parry, when he pulls out the beating stick, it really tickles my urge to risk the wall. The Crown of Towers is another straightforward area where the Veredicto isn't actually so bad. The platforming and enemies are quite simple, so this was kind of just a light work no reaction thing. So let's skip over to the boss fight. Lesmes is to a boss fight what an ICBM is to a city full of innocents. He will track your location, and the missile will know where it was based on where it isn't. The fight is all about paying attention, especially in the last part. Infanta is a really easy encounter since they forgot to give her invulnerability in the transition phase. But together, they make the third phase a really enjoyable duo fight where you can't afford to forget about the other boss. Infanta does just enough poise damage to knock you into Lesme's attacks, and it is quite easy to lose if you're not paying attention. With the 3 regrets severed, it's time for the elevated temples, home to the most annoying fucking enemies in the game. The first one is kind of countered by Veredicto's length, but if you do get caught in its range, it will hit you almost frame 1 of its animation, so get good. Then there's this fucker, who was actually also in the first game, but unlike the other carryovers, no one likes this guy. Anyways, the goal up here is to reach the messenger so that we can spawn in the Basilica of the Absent Faces. So after I reached that, I booked it straight to the next area. This is where we get the air dash, which is a peculiar change for Blasphemous, but quite a welcome one. This place only really serves to teach you about the air dash, so enemy variety isn't that wild. Although Calamity Preparator Hive does make a guest appearance. Veredicto is a boss fight consisting of 3 entities that will periodically fire projectiles at the— oh wait, that's Tres Angustias. I actually died to this one. Veredicto's attacks are good at clipping you if you forget to apply logic to the telegraphs. By the way, her attacks are actually well telegraphed, but you do have to be able to discern their language. She also goes quite quickly, and that will hurt. This fight is hard. In the sunken Cathedral, I had a swell time, seeing the return of enemies that have weird poise resistances. I really like this area, especially the part that killed me over 5 times. Oh, by the way, the game taxes you for dying, because the real enemy is the IRS. Like other areas, this one is quite quick, and it feels like you just get spat out immediately. Say what you will, but did the ocean theme boss really need a polearm and spears that come from the ground? I don't know, man. Odon's attacks are a big threat to people who aren't paying attention. Like me. Halfway through the fight, he summons these spear guys that violate the laws of consistency. Now that I realize it, he's a lot like the commanders from Elden. He would even stand still just to buff his little dudes. And he goes down easily since he's just a little too slow. Welcome to the Tower of God, the hardest area in the game if you don't have fire protection. Blasphemous difficulty relies on your exploration, as the game gives you various resistance speeds. And while they have different levels, all of them can stack. And at that point, fire damage becomes a suggestion. Although I find it funny that we keep on jumping into random holes. The Hymn of the Voices in My Head is a boss fought entirely in your Rosary Bead interface. Like I said before, the difficulty of this boss is entirely reliant on your available resistances. But regardless, it should be mentioned that the animations go fucking hard on this one. It really blew me away. The Two Moons area has the worst challenge rooms in the game. There are a lot of challenge rooms, but this one stands out because it bombards you with enemies that just don't work well together, especially without a parry. The mirroring mechanic is cool, but it all goes down pretty much the same way. When exploring this area, make sure that you get this rosary bead because you will need it later. Civizona is Moonlord. This is just straight up Moonlord. I actually died in this fight once because I didn't wear my lightning protection. Funny how she only really has 3 attacks and I somehow found a way to die to them. Either way, if you avoid her attacks right, this fight goes down really quickly. I believe that art inspired by other art is a good thing, but if you were to take something from Hollow Knight, then please God, not the fucking palace. POV, you're playing a Metroidvania and then this banger comes on. Welcome to Crimson Reigns. It's literally just Philippines, but I can't help but express my love for a segment that involves my repeated climb and eventual fall only to climb again. The Sisyphean penance is acting real wild today. But as if the platforming wasn't enough, the developers thought to include enemies, which I would usually avoid, but then there's this guy. The IRS sent their strongest soldier and I am yet to pay for the sin of playing Genshin Impact. This is made incredibly worse by the existence of challenge rooms with no prior checkpoints, so if you die, tough luck, kiddo. The only thing I could think of when getting to the top is that I never want to do that again.
For I am the first penitent, and you shall be the last.
Who the fuck gave Grandpa the chewables? His schizophrenia is making him float now. Every Terno is a fight that seems crazy at first, but if you really examine it, you'll notice that the game has been preparing you for this fight. His attacks are all derived from enemies that you encountered, until of course he decides to legalize nuclear bombs and summon the unmatched power of the sun. I also kept getting hit by the lightning attack until I realized that you're supposed to be jumping it. Memorize attack patterns, exercise patience, and this part of the fight will be a breeze. But the same cannot be said for his second phase, and it's quite a different fight. Initially starting with only 4 attacks in a chain that you just have to remember how to dodge because he barely gives you time to heal. It's 2 reaction dodges followed by running away and then jumping and dashing back into the wave to get 1 hit in. The hard part is sometimes he can clip you, so my best advice is to just dash away during this part. When he leaps at you though, you want to dash towards him. You can get 2 actions done after that. He'll start the second phase of the second phase with the big slash, but he will always appear directly above you, so just dash away once and duck. It might look like he'll hit you, but really it's just a little off the top. The jumping attack also gets an update, and honestly I don't know how to dodge this one. This is pretty much rinse and repeat until he pulls out every other penitent's attacks. Good luck for that one. Incarnate Devotion is a fight that continues the trend in Blasphemous of having very mid-final bosses following a pretty good boss fight. The attacks themselves are not all that complicated, but they're really good at hitting you. I died once on my second attempt, but I put on Chrysanthem's Dash and resistance beads for fire, mystical, and magic damage. This made the fight a whole lot less punishing. But with my limited potions and health, I did still have to do some decent dodging, and with some good work, we'll see that it is possible to beat Blasphemous 2 with only the Veredicto. Thank you so much for watching, and make sure to subscribe so you can catch the next video where I beat Blasphemous 2 with no upgrades. I also have some Elden Ring videos on the way, and maybe even Armored Core 6. Watch out for that. Thanks for watching.
Baptismal sacrament that will unite us in communion to make it flesh. Thus, we will be reborn as a new symbol incarnate, overflowing with devotion. The beginning of a new era